Hey, Bright Lights, welcome back to the Space Doctor series on the Architecting channel. My name is Angela, and I make thoughtful weekly videos that demystify the science of design for well-being. Why do I do this? Well, as an architect, I've spent my whole career studying the topic, and I know firsthand just how powerfully the world around us impacts our physical and mental health, our productivity, even how well we are living on the land and how sustainably we are living. Most people, however, are not as tuned into all this research, and I want to really help architects, engineers, and designers leverage it better, but also help anyone who's interested in a better built world to be an advocate as well as to make changes that are going to make a difference for you in your spaces. And I do this through a deck of cards I created called the Saluted Genesis deck. And it has two parts. The first part deals with fundamental concepts in psychology, anthropology, sociology, neurology that talk about what our well-being is made out of. The second part are 5 theories of saluted genesis that my research has led me to and how each of them play out. So you're going to want to like and subscribe to this channel because every week you get a chance to learn more about this and to take what you're learning and to hear some really good recommendations for how to put it into practice in the spaces that you are touching every day. So if you're ready, let's go ahead and get started with talking about this week's card draw. So the first card that I drew was from the fundamental concepts part of the deck, and it is resources to cope. Now, this is fundamental to salutogenesis. Aaron Antonovsky, who first coined this term, was a medical anthropologist who noticed that patient outcomes, even though all other things being equal, were not the same. And his investigations showed that it had to do with resources to cope. People that had more resources naturally were more likely to heal, to thrive, to do better than people that didn't. So the imagery on this card shows a house of cards that is being blown away because the house of cards doesn't have a solid structure or foundation. Therefore, no matter what gets built, it has no ability to resist a challenge. And when we think about a lot of the spaces that we inhabit, a lot of them do not have a sustainable component to them. They're not giving us resources that we need. In fact, a lot of times the spaces that we're in make it harder for us to function. We might have lights that are glaring and unhealthy, no views to the outside or easy access to the outside, spaces that force us to take an elevator instead of the stair because of security lockdowns, a desk that isn't ergonomic for us, furniture that is in the wrong configuration that we can't move or change, spaces where our back feels exposed, spaces that are drafty and cause us to have high power bills because we can't heat and cool them efficiently. There's so many ways that the environment around us can create health hazards, even safety and security hazards, when a different design could be a game changer. So when we think about resources to cope, we want to think about what we are choosing to include or not include in our spaces. Next up, from the 5 aspects part of the deck, is a card from the Biophilia theory. Now, biophilia, I relate, is all about our connection to nature. I've mentioned before that I'm also a feng shui practitioner, and I've associated the 5 aspects of salutogenesis with corresponding feng shui elements. So, biophilia is associated with the wood element in feng shui, and it is about growth and communication and networks. That relationship that we have, that constant feedback loop between all living beings and the natural world. Now, I love that I drew biophilia along with resources to cope, because the natural world has a circular system. In nature, nothing is ever wasted. Even things like natural disasters, which as human beings we view as tragic or devastating, have a purpose in the natural world. Extinction cycles, new species forming, the cycle of life, predators on the food chain, all of that plays a purpose in nature. And what you're seeing on the card here is a beehive. And the beehive is a really cool example of a super efficient structure that allows the bees to thrive in their community. The hexagon shape is one of the most structurally stable shapes. The hive itself is very efficient in its creation and can be made quickly in many different locations. So, what is biomimicry? Biomimicry uses nature's intelligence to engineer built environment solutions. So basically, people look at plants, animals, fungi, and start to understand how these creatures and systems and plants work, and then start to engineer human solutions for our lives based on that. So, this is the ultimate in having resources to cope and true resiliency. Some examples of how biomimicry works that you probably didn't even realize you were encountering in everyday life are things like Velcro. This came by studying how the burr plant works. There are some really cool things with traffic engineering that have been done by looking at how slime mold communicates within its network to let other slime mold know food sources. And Japanese traffic engineers actually created a map of cities and put down some food sources and slime mold, and allowed the slime mold that were positioned where cities were to create an efficient network between these spots on the map. That was incredibly efficient engineering, and they were able to take that and use it for rail design. We've seen things like fungi that inspired bioremediation so that we can do land restoration and toxic waste cleaning by imitating how nature does that. We've seen things like the way that plants use evapotranspiration, which is basically a filtering system to better engineer waterless portable toilets. Fungi have been used to create heat insulating panels that perform better than traditional insulation. And it's also completely biodegradable, unlike things like foam and fiberglass, which are actually environmental hazards and create landfill waste when we have to replace them. So there's so many great examples in how we can look to nature, whether it's swim fabric that came from the way that shark skin works, or the way that we can filter and desalinize water using what our own cells and every other animal's cells do through the aquaporin membrane. And I love the way that we can understand how nature works and use it. And there's a lot of great sources. A friend of mine, Blaine Brownell, studies biomimicry at the University of North Carolina and has written multiple books about it. There's also the Biomimicry Institute. So you can easily look this up. You can source real products that are available today, and you can start to use them in your work. You can also start to teach more about how they work so that other people will be able to use these things too and take advantage of them. So let's put the two things together and explore how resources to cope is a naturally occurring phenomenon. By simply employing biomimicry tactics, we take a page from nature and we create more resources within the way that we design, build, engineer, and live on this planet. That means that we are healthier, our lives are more sustainable, and more regenerative and healing for us. I hope you enjoyed today's topic. I thought it was a really fun one. And remember to like and subscribe, because when I draw these cards, I don't know what two cards I'm going to get. I really do leave that up to chance and trust that the cards I pull are the message that we all need for the week. And so, even if I have pulled a card before, I do believe a few weeks ago I did pull resources to cope, but it was paired with a completely different card. So, as you can imagine, these are complex theories, and I'm not going to cover every single thing about them, nor would you remember that if I were to talk about it in its totality when I draw the card. So by the pairing of the cards, I'm able to talk about what is important and how the two concepts complement one another. So again, even if I'm drawing the same card, you are going to learn something different every time I talk about it, because we're going to be able to talk about things that I might not have touched on the last time I talked about the card. I am really enjoying this series and the chance to even be inspired myself by how the two things that I draw every week complement one another. And I'd love it if you leave a comment and share your own insights and aha moments on how this inspiration is helping you. I am really personally on a mission to make more people aware of just how powerful the decisions we make about the spaces that we inhabit or that people that we design for inhabit truly does impact our well-being as a human race. And I hope that you will join me on that. Thank you so much for listening all the way to the very end, and I will see you next time.